Okay, we have started. Hope everyone's had a good day today.
Great day.
Okay, so did everyone get a chance to look at the readings?
Yes.
Malia?
Yes.
Okay, good. Safe bear. Okay, so let's just have a look at the questions then. Have another Google Hangout. Okay, discuss the following. As you look at the facts that you are learning about Regency Fashion, what sorts of inferences can you draw about the society? Does everyone know what inference means?
Yeah, kinda, I think.
Every-
Because I don't fully know, so... Okay, basically it's just like a conclusion reached on the basis of evidence and reasoning. So it's basically, I think the question's asking is to come up with a conclusion based on evidence. So they basically want us to, so what are some of the facts basically that we can see about society from the way that they would dress? So that's the first question. Anyone want to go first?
Yeah, I can go.
All right, go for it.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Okay. So,
Yeah, we can.
all right, awesome.
Yeah, I just didn't have it up.
All right, perfect. So I did some studying about the Regency or whatever, and I was reading about how France had a super big impact on like how they dressed and stuff like that. So I think they were looking up to the fashion trends were in France. But also it seems like they were paying more attention to their body form a little bit more than before. Like before they'd have really, really thick and poofy guys would have really thick clothing and stuff like that. But it said that the guys cleaner cuts of clothing kind of showed their form a little bit more. Yeah, I think that's all I got for that.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. So England, you said, was trying to catch up with France?
Yeah, so I was reading this thing that Napoleon influence on the fashion trends and stuff like that. It's in England were kind of fashion rivals, it said.
Really?
Yeah. That's about all I got for that.
No, that's cool. Malia, did you have anything for that question?
Mm-mm. It's just the way that they dress up tells who they are. So like for my reading, that's how it was dressing up in the 17th or 18th centuries. But how I connected it to our society now, we are changing the way how we dress. It's not like like back in the days they dress up like fully dress up. They have like those that is appear in our reading the types of clothes that they are wear. But now we are not. We just dress in a way we are because it will explains or tells who we are. Maybe that's all.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's good. Okay.
So something I thought that was interesting in the Jane Austen readings that we did, it said that a lot of time, so it says when they were like cutting their hair and they were wearing tighter clothes, that it kind of reflected like what women were doing. So kind of like how women were making their bodies like look slimmer, like you were saying about like going away from like big poofy dresses or big poofy like other things, like everything was all like poofy. It's more like slimming and like looking at their body shape more. So I thought that was interesting that it was kind of shaped around where women's fashion was going, and like men were kind of following that. That's all I got.
Cool. One thing that I learned in regards to women, I don't know how about this. It's kind of awkward, but in the reading, it talked about how women like would wear corsets, and how obviously the corset would bring the waistline in, and so the fashion was. I read on the Jane Austen website that the fashion was going more to like what the true waistline as opposed to the big and the puffy. It wasn't as the tight corsets that we would see that would come later on in fashion, but it was just more that they would come in and the waistline would be more evident. They also talked about so there was a more emphasis on the women's chest. Kind of weird to talk about, but it's interesting to see that shift, because at the start, like in the 18th century, like women were very, it was very elegant, very dignified, but then already in the second period that we're looking at, we're starting to see the shift on certain body parts. So it'll be interesting to see as we go further along if, we see that change as we get into today, where men and women seem to wear less and less and less. But yeah, that was one of the things that I learned. I also liked some of the stuff on the, I kind of read contradictory things. Some things said that the women started to dress not according to their status. So in the 18th century, it was very much about like, we want to stay white skinned so that we can, it's in classes. But then as the Regency era started to come in, it wasn't so much about that, it was more individual expression about what you wear, what I read. So that was interesting as well.
I think something that has to do with like why they were dressing the way they did, and like why there was such contradicting things, because this time period is like French Revolution, and like a lot of people didn't want to be like associated with the aristocracy and all that business, and so there's a lot of tension between the bourgeoisie and aristocrats, and especially like knowing the difference between the two. So people were more dressing for themselves. They weren't dressing to show their social class. They were just dressing to dress and look nice to themselves, not so much to show their distinction and rank.
Solid.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, that was good thoughts. Let's go to the next question or the next statement. Okay, it's talking about, so it says, what sort of meaning can we attach to the changes in women's sense of what shape their body should have, or the fact that hairstyles were simplified? What does this have to do with the way women were thought of or thought about themselves? Well, I'll start with a comment about that. I think it kind of goes off what Kimberly was saying. Obviously, people started to become, I guess, individuals in their opinion about how they wanted to dress. We start to see a shift in what mainstream society is doing, and now we're getting more into the idea of cant, meaning it's open to interpretation a little bit more about what beauty is and how we dress and what we think of ourselves. And so I guess maybe their definition of what a woman's body should look like and what is beautiful started to change, because we're starting to see the corsets come in, more focus on the chest, more focus on being individual and stemming away from what everyone else is doing. So I think that shows that women were starting to think differently about themselves and their bodies and how they should dress. And also, I think too, I think it's interesting that their hairstyles and things were simplified, because if you look at, on the other assignment we had today, there was like those pictures of women and their hairstyles were done in like, you know, the weaves and the curls and everything. It was so much effort, like, you know, and that really would have been a class distinction between a non-working woman and a woman who was a working class, because you'd have no time to do your hair like that every day. And so now those who were of a non-working class are now getting real simple with their hair. They're like toning it down a little bit, and not doing as much. So we can see kind of like a little shift there as well. Some thoughts. Anyone else?
I can say. I can go now? Oh, okay.
Yeah, go.
Just add on to what you say. It's the way how a woman will be thinking to show their beauty. It just depend on the shapes of their body that they want it. Like, if I'm not saying this to be rude, like if that woman like skinny, and then like many people were like accusing her for that skinny body, and then trying to get like gaining weight and that thing, and then will mix that person beauty. I think it would depend from how a woman wanted to be changes the way how they fix their hairstyles and things. It just depends from a woman point of view. That's my thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Malia. Malo Albito.
I don't know the question right.
I think I just as you were talking, Malia, I also read something else that was pretty interesting too. Just there's something else that came to mind. Like, we're talking about this whole period of time where yeah, there it is. Talking about this whole period of time where it was about oneself, about how you would look. Because prior in the 18th century, it was more so about there was just oneself. It was just the inside and the outside. It was considered one, but now this concept of an external self. And back then, it was only expressed through clothing. So when you went to a ball, you wore specific clothing. So you could not show your individuality through your clothing. You just had to dress like everybody else. And so they talk about this new natural style that comes like from ease and comfort. And something that I thought was really interesting is they talked about hygiene. So, you know, because the clothes weren't as big and as heavy as what they once were, you know, it was easier to wash the clothes and to, you know, it was more hygienic, this new natural style that was coming in as well. So that was another interesting point. Okay, I think the next question is talking about the importance of the waist. Let's just have a look.
You do with way women were thought about themselves.
Yeah, I think we kind of covered that. Unless if you had some more thoughts, Melina. If not, yeah, I think the next one is the significance of the empire waist. If anyone has any thoughts about that. Did anyone read anything about that? The significance of the empire waist?
Let me try and find it. But it says that it's like, so like you were saying, how clothing is easier for it. So when they were wearing so many different layers, because like when they wore their undergarments, they had like 12, like 7 or so, I think it said, different layers. And so being able to like have all of their clothing be so much lighter made it better, because it was to show their curves more, because there wasn't as much fabric in between. And so that was something that I read. And so, yeah, I don't really know, but like also when they when you come in at the waist, it kind of makes you look like longer, like it makes you look taller. and so it kind of makes like a flowy effect to it. And like when they added like ribbons or like the little beadings to it, it kind of like highlights your waistline. And so like it's like usually like cut low at the neckline, and then shows like it kind of like accentuates like all of your figure to make you look more like a woman, not so much like in the way they dressed before, where it was just sort of like straight like a board.
Elongating the figure, giving a high-waisted appearance.
Yeah. Pretty.
Yeah,
Go, Amelia.
Yeah, just add on to what Kimberly was sharing. It's give a high-waisted appearance, and it's also suitable for a wide range of figures. And yep, locating the figures of the woman that are wearing it. That's all.
Yep. Thanks, Amelia. Yeah, that's what I was reading as well. One website said that one second. Yeah, one website was talking about what the reading actually said on the actual assignment, like that Sister Hall put up, talking about how the small-waisted things came into effect, but it was also focusing on the bustiness of a woman. So that helped with that too. If the waist was a little bit higher, it focused on the bustiness. And also the figure was another important thing, which Kimberly already spoke about. So they're the other things that I learned. Okay. It also, the next question is, why did men become simpler in their dress?
Again, like with the French Revolution, like people who wore like certain trousers or certain pants, they're called like, oh goodness, what is it, like something like sans culottes, I think, something like that. And it's like basically like without breeches or like with breeches. And so like people who wore certain clothing were associated with certain groups from the French Revolution. So that was something that was a really big part of it. So men were changing the way they dressed to like associate themselves with different groups of the French Revolution on whatever side they were fighting with or against. So that was something I noticed.
Awesome.
Dana, do you have any comments you want to say? I know that you're got frozen, so.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
I found something interesting about their hair. Was that part of the question, like their haircuts and stuff? Okay. So
okay, go ahead.
I found this thing called the Hair Powder Act of 1795, like about 5 years before this all started. And you guys know those big wigs that the guys used to wear? They placed like a special tax on it, or you had to go through like this big process to wear one and stuff like that. So they slowly started dying off as the years progressed, and they stopped wearing those big wigs. So that was pretty cool. It's called the Hair Powder Act of 1795.
The Hair Powder Act. I'm going to look that up, the Hair Powder Act, eh?
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting that, like even when you look at the men's stuff, men's fashion during Regency, like they got rid of lace and embroidery and other things. Like they just became a lot more streamlined and like they're tightly fitted leather riding breeches and other things. It's kind of interesting that like that's like today's fashion, tight leathered stuff and other things. And
yeah.
Lapels changed and everything I feel like kind of simplified.
Yeah.
We go from having these massive like puffs and big collars and jackets and wigs and everything, and then all of a sudden during this period it simplifies and it cuts down a little bit. So I thought that was interesting to do with the men.
Yeah. Yeah, this wasn't in the reading, but I wonder if they kind of started getting a sense of what was more masculine, you know, like, because the guys before kind of, I think they dressed kind of feminine, you know, like they would wear heels and stuff like that. So maybe they just got more of like an idea of what was masculine. I don't know.
Well, like heels, those were like a masculine thing before they became a feminine thing. So, but like I definitely see where you're going from with like the lace and things like that, because lace was something used by women to like accentuate their bodies and stuff like that and make their like torsos look longer. So I can definitely see where that could come into play with like changing how their frilliness was.
Yeah. Amelia, did you have anything?
No.
Well, the last question says, how do these things relate to such issues as relationships between men and women, or the fact that the middle class is gaining more power in England? The French Revolution, this is when the bourgeoisie was like fighting against the aristocrats, because aristocrats were only like 10% of their population, and then 90% was all middle class or lower class. And so they finally figured out there was more of them, and that they could combat what the aristocrats are doing with all their high taxes and not letting them get out of buying land and all that different sort of thing. So why was becoming middle class so important, and looking middle class?
My point of view, maybe the middle class started to dress more like the get the way how to dress up like the upper class, and that's why it started.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because like aristocrats didn't want people thinking that they were aristocrats, because if they started walking the streets, the bourgeoisie would get mad at them and they'd like tar and feather them. So try and look more like middle class, and they was kind of like trying to minimize the division between the two classes.
So I guess that kind of answers the question that, was there issues with the higher class getting upset? Were they getting upset with that they were trying to look like a lower class? Was the government? Didn't I just read something? So the higher class was dressing more like the middle class, yeah. Oh, okay. So maybe because the higher class were becoming more like the middle class, and because the question talks about gaining more power in England, maybe that that more of the middle class were mixing more with the higher class because they were dressing the same. That could be a point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe they were having more influence on the decisions that were happening in the higher class because they were all mingling together because they were dressing the same, which would make a lot of sense because they were, far more free with what they were wearing as opposed to what they were before. So,
yeah. What was the question about their relationships?
Yeah.
Ken?
Just like questioning like if the like strengthened relationship between men and women, or like what the relationship was between men and women's fashion. We kind of answered that about
okay, yeah.
men becoming that way, but but it says the fact that the middle class is gaining more power in England. So the class how did like what they're wearing relate to that, how the middle class was gaining more power. And so again, like middle class is just sort of like mad at the aristocrats for taxing them so much. And that's when the French Revolution began. King Louis. Yeah. Does anybody have any other comments or things that they read?
Or maybe like the middle class, like dress more like the upper class, and then maybe they are so attracted to the upper class and they got married, and that's why more middle class like involving being a upper class, and that's why they overpower, gaining power for England.
Cool. Does anyone else have any other thoughts or anything? We can probably wrap it up. It's a pretty good discussion. I'm doing the paper tonight. So it should be pretty straightforward, just 1 to 1.5 page, making a statement of how Regency Fashion says something about the culture and or values of England at the time, which we just talked about at the end there. So I'll be able to write about that a little bit. Just to have a quick discussion. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to add for the Google Hangout discussion before I stop it?
Nope.
Okay.